一文不值的破牌子，你们洛云宗都穷成这样。
能当韩某面再说一遍吗？
二伯，此人就是我与你说过那个黄风骨姓韩的。
当年之事多有冒犯。
今日邀诸位来此，是想严请诸位陪本侯跑一趟木兰草原。
Analysis of episode 171 of The Record of a Mortal's Journey to Immortality. Han Li intervenes to help Sun Huo out of a difficult situation, unexpectedly uncovering past events. He also encounters Nanlongyuan and Wang Chan, and secretly meets with Sankuan Shangren about his treasure. Picking up where we left off, Han Li walks down the street and sees a dozen cultivators gathered in front of a small general store, with several inside facing off. Among them is a handsome young man in black, his expression indignant. Sun Huo, a disciple of Huiyun Peak, whom he had met briefly at the Luoyun sect's sword trial tournament. 20 years have passed, and while his appearance remains unchanged, his cultivation has improved considerably. Confronting Sun Huo are three local cultivators with unfriendly expressions. Judging by their attire, they are likely the shopkeeper and his employees. The shopkeeper, with a short beard, arrogantly declares that Sun Huo's Luoyun sect token is useless here, and if Sun Huo returns to Shi Kingdom, he has no reason to pursue him. He further accused Sun Huo of being unable to pay for the shop's losses with spirit stones, emphasizing that the damaged fire cloud talisman was not an ordinary mid-grade talisman, but rather the work of a talisman-making master from Tianqian City, and that demanding 300 spirit stones was already exceptionally lenient. Finally, he disdainfully mocked whether all cultivators of the Falling Cloud sect were impoverished. After speaking, he deliberately glanced at the wooden box held by the shop assistant beside him, his face showing regret, as if he had truly suffered a great loss. Upon hearing this, Sun Huo, enraged, laughed, retorting that the other party's boasting of an ordinary fire cloud talisman as a masterpiece was clearly a fabrication and an attempt to extort money. The shopkeeper, however, coldly countered by asking if Sun Huo, with his cultivation level and discernment, could distinguish the authenticity of the talisman, and threatened to call the city's law enforcement officer to adjudicate. Sun Huo's face immediately turned pale, knowing that in this place, the law enforcement officer would most likely favor the local cultivators, and this matter would likely be difficult to resolve. After a moment's hesitation, he gritted his teeth and took out a stack of talismans, indicating that although most were low to mid-grade, they were still worth 200 or 300 spirit stones. Seeing this, the shopkeeper's expression softened slightly. Just as he was about to take them, Sun Huo suddenly pulled out a nearly half-tattered yellow talisman, treating it with unusual care, before handing over the rest. The shopkeeper, seeing this, mocked him again, saying that even such damaged items were treated with such fervor. The Falling Cloud sect was indeed stingy. He reached for the talismans again, but a figure flashed, and a cultivator in a green robe suddenly stepped between the two, sweeping away the entire stack of talismans with a flick of his sleeve. Both Sun Huo and the shopkeeper were startled. The shopkeeper even took several steps back, sternly questioning the newcomer's intentions. The cultivator, expressionless and cold, spoke, stating that he had heard the other party repeatedly insult the Luoyun sect and asked if they dared to repeat their words in his presence. Upon finishing speaking, an astonishing spiritual pressure emanated from him, enveloping the shop like a tidal wave. The surrounding cultivators paled and retreated, some with lower cultivation even staggering to their knees. Two core formation cultivators nearby also felt a jolt. One of them cried out in alarm, a nascent soul cultivator. But under the cold glance of the green-robed cultivator, they hastily fell silent, daring not to utter another word. These two were unfamiliar faces. Han Li did not recognize them, nor did he know which sect they belonged to. At this moment, the shopkeeper and two employees in front of Han Li were already pinned to the ground by the immense spiritual pressure so close at hand, unable to move an inch. Their faces were filled with terror, and upon hearing that Han Li was a nascent soul cultivator, they were terrified out of their wits, hastily trying to beg for mercy. However, the three men felt as if a colossal mountain was pressing down on them, making it difficult even to breathe, let alone speak. The surrounding cultivators were also pale-faced. Some cowardly individuals, fearing being caught in the crossfire, had already quietly retreated. Sun Huo, standing behind Han Li, had received special treatment from Han Li and, apart from being forced back a few steps by the aftershocks of the spiritual pressure, felt no discomfort. Upon recognizing Han Li, his expression changed, and he immediately stepped forward, respectfully bowing and addressing himself as disciple Sun Huo, paying respects to Grandmaster Han. Han Li ignored the three men on the ground, turning his gaze to the half-torn talisman clutched tightly in Sun Huo's hand. He nodded slightly, indicating that since Sun Huo already knew his current identity, there was no need for further explanation. Upon hearing this, Sun Huo recalled his disrespectful words and actions towards Han Li in the sect's sacred ground and felt greatly uneasy, quickly and honestly apologizing. Han Li calmly stated that at that time, he had not yet officially become a sect elder and naturally would not hold it against him. He abruptly changed the subject, pointing out that the fragmented talisman in Sun Huo's hand seemed to have some connection to him. Sun Huo was initially stunned, then his face lit up with elation. Just as he was about to say something, a silver streak of light streaked through the air from afar. Han Li waved his hand to stop him, squinting at the streak of light. Anyone capable of flying freely within Tiantian City without the air ban was naturally an enforcer from the Nine Kingdoms Alliance. Sun Huo immediately fell silent, obediently standing aside with his hands clasped, but his inner excitement was barely contained, and his grip on the talisman tightened unconsciously. A moment later, the streak of light landed before Han Li, revealing an elderly man with yellow hair, his cultivation at the mid-stage of the core formation realm. A small golden sword was embroidered on his chest, the insignia of an enforcer. The old man introduced himself as Wu Fei. Although he knew he was facing a nascent soul cultivator, due to his duty, he still stepped forward respectfully, asking if there was anything he could do for Han Li. Han Li stood with his hands behind his back, coldly stating that he was merely passing by and had overheard the shopkeeper's dissatisfaction with the Luoyun sect, thus wishing to have the shopkeeper repeat his remarks in person. The enforcer, upon hearing this, immediately felt troubled. Matters concerning a sect's reputation were the most difficult to judge. He could only try to calm Han Li down while sternly ordering the three prostrate shopkeepers to immediately apologize. By this time, Han Li had slightly withdrawn his spiritual pressure, allowing the three to shakily rise. The shopkeeper, pale as a ghost, repeatedly claimed it was a slip of the tongue and that he had no intention of disrespecting the Luoyun sect. He even offered to waive the compensation for the fire cloud talisman as an apology. However, Han Li's expression grew even more somber. He coldly stated that he wasn't seeking such a small advantage and insisted on first verifying the authenticity of the so-called master-made fire cloud talisman. If it was genuine, he was willing to compensate. If it was a fake, he would not be lenient. Seeing this, the shopkeeper broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly admitted that the talisman was indeed an ordinary item and that he was willing to accept punishment. Han Li said nothing more, only glancing indifferently at the enforcer. The enforcer understood immediately and bowed, guaranteeing that he would severely punish the shop's fraudulent and slanderous acts against the sect, giving the falling cloud sect a satisfactory explanation. Only then did Han Li calmly state that he did not wish to waste time on such a trivial matter, and with a flick of his sleeve, he and Sun Huo vanished instantly, enveloped in an earth-yellow escape light. After Han Li left, the enforcer turned to face the three shopkeepers, who were relieved but ashen-faced. His expression instantly turned cold, and he sternly demanded that they immediately return with him for a detailed investigation and punishment. The shopkeeper, upon hearing this, inwardly groaned, but dared not disobey in the slightest. Behind a secluded stone house in the city, a flash of yellow light appeared, and Han Li and Sun Huo emerged. Han Li indicated that they were there, and had Sun Huo retrieve the half-finished talisman. Without hesitation, Sun Huo immediately offered the talisman with both hands. Han Li took it with one hand, glanced at it briefly, and then silently took out the other half of the talisman. Under Sun Huo's unwavering gaze, the two pieces of talisman perfectly matched at the tear, fitting together seamlessly. Sun Huo's last doubt vanished, and without hesitation, he bowed again, saying, "Sun Huo greets master." Han Li's expression remained unchanged. He nodded slightly, and a flash of red light appeared in his hand. Both pieces of talisman turned to ashes simultaneously and disappeared without a trace. Sun Huo was startled, but quickly regained his composure. Han Li was somewhat satisfied with his composure. He calmly asked Sun Huo which generation of descendant Sun Ergu he was. Without hesitation, Sun Huo replied that he was the 7th generation descendant of his ancestor. Han Li slowly recounted the past, mentioning that Sun Ergu had sworn to serve him as master for generations, but for some reason failed to fulfill this vow, and Han Li had never provided protection to the Sun family. Now that Sun Huo has entered the world of cultivation, the vow he made years ago may no longer be binding. Out of consideration for Sun Ergu, he offered Sun Huo two choices: 1. To provide him with some pills or magical artifacts as a reward, and then sever all ties; 2. For Sun Huo to willingly inherit his ancestor's vow and continue to serve him as master, but he would need to place a restriction on him to prevent betrayal and perform tasks for him, which might be dangerous. However, as compensation, Han Li would do his best to guide his cultivation, provide resources, and help him improve his cultivation, even hoping he could form his core. Upon hearing this, Sun Huo's expression shifted, a hint of confusion flashing in his eyes. Clearly, this matter was completely unexpected, and he was struggling to make a decision. After a long pause, a resolute look appeared on his face, and he was about to speak. Unexpectedly, Han Li interrupted him, saying that to prevent him from changing his mind, there was no need to rush to answer. He could return to his sect after the trade fair to think it over carefully, and then come to his cave to inform him of his final decision. After careful consideration, Sun Huo felt this method was more prudent and hurriedly and respectfully agreed. Han Li's expression softened slightly. He explained that he had other important matters to attend to and told Sun Huo to take care of himself. Then, he disappeared again in the yellow light. Sun Huo didn't leave immediately. Instead, he lowered his head and pondered for a long time before letting out a long sigh and slowly walking away. Meanwhile, Han Li appeared in front of the attic of his residence. He looked up at the completely dark night sky, a strange look flashing across his face, before entering the attic. In the first floor hall, Mu Piling was meditating. Upon seeing Han Li's return, she immediately rose to greet him gracefully. Han Li waved his hand, telling her not to be so polite. He explained that he couldn't accompany her during the trade fair and that she could move around freely. He also gave her one of a pair of azure jade pendants, instructing her to wear it at all times. If she encountered danger, she could infuse it with spiritual energy for protection, and he could sense her within 1,000 miles. Mu Piling was taken aback at first, then her cheeks flushed slightly. She thanked him softly and hung the jade pendant at her waist. After instructing her to go back to her room to rest, Han Li went up to the second floor, found a bedroom, and closed his eyes to meditate. About an hour later, he opened his eyes, glanced at the night outside the window, and muttered to himself that the time had come and he should keep his appointment. Then, he moved swiftly, heading towards a corner of Tianqian City. Following the instructions in the jade slip given to him by Marquis Nanlong, Han Li traversed several streets and arrived at a seemingly ordinary stone house. The house consisted of only 2 connected rooms, utterly unremarkable. Before he could even knock, the door opened by itself, and Marquis Nanlong, wearing a jade crown and a purple robe, his long beard flowing over his chest, emerged with a smile, saying, "Finally, we've met, fellow Daoist Han. We were just about to introduce you to some fellow Taoists." Han Li exchanged a few polite words and was led inside. The house was empty, without a single person in sight, but Han Li scanned it with his divine sense and detected fluctuations in the protective barrier. Marquis Nanlong smiled slightly, indicating that such a small trick naturally wouldn't fool fellow Daoist Han. Then, a golden glow shot from his sleeve, a white light flashed on the ground, the illusion vanished, revealing a dark stone staircase. Marquis Nanlong descended the steps first, followed by Han Li, who frowned slightly. The stone steps were short, and in the blink of an eye, they reached a small underground hall. The hall was dimly lit, with only a few moonstones emitting a soft white light, illuminating the figures of 7 or 8 cultivators. 6 of them were seated, while a man and a woman stood side by side, seemingly having traveled together. Upon seeing Marquis Nanlong and Han Li enter, everyone's gaze swept over them. The standing man, upon seeing Han Li's face, paled drastically and exclaimed in surprise, as if recognizing Han Li. Han Li was startled by this. His gaze fell on the man's face, and what came into view was a familiar silver mask. It was Wang Chan, the young master of the ghost spirit sect, who had chased him relentlessly years before. The same mask, the same person, only the arrogance in his eyes had faded, replaced by a sense of weariness and anger. A mocking smile appeared on Han Li's lips as he said calmly, "I never expected to encounter an old friend here. It's truly unexpected." Wang Chan's voice was hoarse, filled with disbelief and fear, as she pointed out that Han Li had actually condensed his nascent soul. A black-robed man sitting in front of Wang Chan coldly asked if she recognized him. Wang Chan hurriedly addressed him as second uncle, explaining that Han Li was the Yellow Maple Valley cultivator from back then, and attempted to bring up the past. The black-robed man, Wang Tengu of the Ghost Spirit sect, frowned, interrupting Wang Chan, saying that since Han Li was already a nascent soul cultivator, why would he bother with a junior like him? He then smiled warmly at Han Li, introduced himself, and hoped that Han Li would, for his family's sake, not pursue the matter of the past. Han Li sneered inwardly. How could he easily let go of the grudge from back then? But the current situation was unclear, so he could only respond casually, saying that the past was past and he wouldn't hold a grudge. Upon hearing this, Wang Tengu knew Han Li's words might not be sincere, but he still praised Han Li's magnanimity and said he would strictly discipline Wang Chan upon returning. Then, seemingly casually, he mentioned that Han Li had cultivated from the foundation establishment stage to the nascent soul stage in less than 200 years. His talent was truly astonishing, and he might even reach the late nascent soul stage in the future. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the other cultivators in the hall, including the Marquis of Nanlong, changed. Han Li inwardly cursed, knowing that Wang Chengu's words were intended to make him the target of everyone's criticism. Sure enough, after a moment of silence, a dark-skinned man in the corner asked Han Li strangely if he was truly under 300 years old. Han Li could only give a vague answer, his gaze quickly sweeping over everyone present. He noticed that the beautiful young woman beside Wang Chan was also in the late core formation stage, composed and unhurried, presumably Yang Ruyan, the daughter of the Yang family with a heavenly spiritual root. The other 6 were all nascent soul cultivators, one of whom, a white-robed, beardless old man, was at the mid-nascent soul stage, just like the Marquis of Nanlong. Han Li's gaze met the old man's, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Though his heart trembled, he outwardly averted his eyes without showing any emotion. At that moment, Marquis Nanlong invited Han Li to sit down. Han Li sat down calmly, glancing at Wang Chan, whose expression shifted unpredictably, with a half-smile. Wang Chan had managed to regain her composure, but her gaze towards Han Li was filled with apprehension and resentment. Yang Ruyan, on the other hand, had clear eyes and glanced at Han Li a few more times, her thoughts unreadable. Once everyone was seated, Marquis Nanlong's expression turned serious. He stood in the center and spoke in a deep voice, explaining that although those present belonged to righteous, demonic, and rogue cultivators, they all shared an exceptionally strong divine sense. This was the reason for their invitation. Some already knew the general outline, but most were still unaware, so a detailed explanation was needed before deciding whether to participate. Participation would not be forced. Han Li knew the main point had arrived and listened attentively. At this moment, a cold-faced cultivator sitting opposite Wang Chengu suddenly challenged him, questioning why the 2 core formation juniors from the Ghost Spirit sect were present. Could their divine sense be comparable to that of the nascent soul cultivators present? Nanlong, who, seemingly prepared, explained that Wang Chan and Yang Ruyan were proficient in secret techniques, and their combined divine sense, for a short period, was no weaker than that of a nascent soul cultivator. He reiterated the difficulty of finding those with strong divine sense. The cold-faced cultivator, hearing this, said nothing more. Seeing this, Nanlong, who finally revealed his purpose, he wanted to invite everyone to accompany him on a trip to the Mulan grasslands. Upon hearing this, most of the cultivators' expressions changed slightly, including Han Li. The cold-faced cultivator directly pressed him, confirming that he hadn't misheard. Nanlong, who hurriedly explained that they weren't going deep into the grasslands, but only to the edge, about 100 miles away. However, the cold-faced cultivator still stated that this was extremely risky, pointing out that the Mulan mags were powerful and skilled in combined attacks. If discovered, their chances of survival would be slim. Nanlong, who admitted that mags were difficult to deal with, mentioning his own experience of fighting a mage of the same level for 3 days without victory. Upon hearing this, Wang Chengu deduced that since the Marquis of Nanlong was willing to take such a perilous journey, there must be something extraordinary on the grasslands. The Marquis of Nanlong laughed heartily, praising Wang Chengu for his understanding, and then asked if anyone had heard of the name Master Tsankuan. An old woman, moved, chimed in, inquiring whether he was the mad cultivator from Chennan who had overpowered both the righteous and demonic paths 5,000 years ago. The Marquis of Nanlong confirmed this, and described in detail how this person possessed extraordinary abilities in his time, so much so that even the leaders of the righteous and demonic paths dared not easily claim victory over him. Wang Chengu's expression was strange as he inquired whether this matter was related to Venerable Tsankuan. Marquis Nanlong solemnly announced that their destination was a secret cave meticulously prepared by Venerable Tsankuan before his passing. The old woman immediately expressed disbelief, as rumors circulated that Venerable Tsankuan had already been besieged and killed by a group of cultivators. Just as Marquis Nanlong was about to explain, the previously silent white-robed elder spoke, revealing the secret. Venerable Tsankuan had actually escaped by self-destructing his puppet avatar, employing a clever deception, but he was severely injured and subsequently disappeared. He and Marquis Nanlong found the place where he had passed away and learned from the remaining information that this venerable had risked entering the Fallen Demon Valley and become the first recorded person to survive it. Survived the Fallen Demon Valley, the old woman exclaimed shrilly, her face filled with excitement. Everyone else, including Han Li, gasped in shock. The dark-faced cultivator, after pondering for a moment, sneered, questioning, even if this were true, what did it have to do with the Mulan grasslands? Could the treasure be hidden in the grassland cave? Marquis Nanlong picked up the thread, indicating that while fellow deist Bing hadn't quite guessed correctly, he wasn't far off. According to the remaining information, Venerable Tsankuan passed away shortly after leaving the valley, but the treasures he brought from the fallen demon valley were undoubtedly extraordinary, and coupled with his own cultivation techniques and secret treasures, their value was immeasurable. He asked the others if they truly wanted to miss such an opportunity. The white-robed elder added that with everyone working together, ordinary mags would find it difficult to stop them, and even if danger arose, they could break out separately. If they weren't even willing to take this risk, they could withdraw. Hearing their words, Wang Chan, the old woman, and the others hesitated. Han Li, however, calmly spoke up, raising his doubts. If the two of you already knew the location of the cave, why did you need to gather everyone, and specifically those with strong spiritual sense? Was it related to the method of opening the cave? Marquis Nanlong stated that this question hit the nail on the head. He explained that the two had indeed found the cave dwelling, but it was surrounded by a mysterious ancient magic array. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't break it. Being in a dangerous place, they dared not linger and had to retreat to investigate. They eventually discovered that this array was the ancient, lost supreme mysterious divine restriction. Wang Chengu's expression changed upon hearing this, exclaiming that it was one of the 10 great ancient restrictions. The Marquis of Nanlong praised his erudition, and the white-robed elder continued to explain that breaking this restriction required either brute force to wear it down over a long period, or 8 individuals with powerful divine senses to use their divine sense transformation abilities to break it. Brute force wouldn't work on the Mulan grasslands, only the latter method would suffice. If one's divine sense was strong enough, it could be accomplished within a day. At this point, everyone in the hall suddenly understood, realizing the Marquis of Nanlong's true purpose in seeking cultivators with powerful divine senses, and also understanding the two's strategy of only seeking early-stage nascent soul cultivators and those with exceptional divine senses. Faced with the temptations of the fallen Demon Valley treasures and the Tsankuan relics, no one dared to back down. Each had already made their own calculations. Seeing that no one was leaving, Marquis Nanlong finally showed a satisfied smile.